ladies and gentlemen, is a first in the history of the Somewhat Sports Podcast. This is highly entertaining for us. We'll definitely give you the backstory into the makings of this current episode that you are listening to right now on YouTube and or Spotify. But wow, breaking news just broke essentially, and we rarely do this for the pod because we typically have our strict schedule and all of us are busy. But we had to make a very special exception here because a massive deal that we've talked about several times on the pod over the last month and a half or so just broke within the last couple hours, ladies and gentlemen. You're probably going to hear this honestly the same night that we're recording this at the moment because that's how big this is. That's absolutely insane. I'm not going to waste any more time. Ladies and gentlemen, Donovan Mitchell was finally traded. The Utah Jazz, the franchise player of the Utah Jazz, for I think 2 years now, rumblings of frustrations and stuff like that, especially over the last year, and once again another early playoff exit. Finally, things boil over, and he is finally dealt, but not to the New York Knicks, who were recently in big talks with the Utah Jazz up until recently. I have a Knicks fan here with me. We're going to talk about that here very soon. Now with the Miami Heat, my team, who would I have been cool with Donovan Mitchell? Sure, but I've been the most probably realistic and grounded Heat fan of them all in terms of knowing that this wasn't going to happen. No, ladies and gentlemen, Donovan Mitchell is traded to the Cleveland Cavaliers. What? Why? How? When? What? Huh? We're going to try to answer all those questions on this special edition of the Somewhat Sports Podcast. And of course, joining me, the usual fearless leader, of course, still our fearless leader, my man and my personal therapist on the side, joining me here. I don't know how to describe him. In terms, I'll let him explain his emotions. But Chris is with me on this special edition. Dame is unable to make it with us tonight, ladies and gentlemen. But Chris is here to help navigate us through the whole thing. Chris, we both had the same reaction when we saw the news break, because it literally broke an hour after we recorded the newest episode.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just pissed because this shit always happens after we record. Yeah. We got the KD news kind of, during one episode, so that was nice, but that ended up being very disappointing because the piece of shit didn't get traded. But this shit happened legit right after. Look, I took a nap after we finished recording, and then I just woke up and I just saw Donovan Mitchell traded to the Cavs, and I couldn't speak for a good half hour. That was my reaction.
Yeah, I went back to I had food, and then I was on my work laptop doing a couple things, and then I saw that break, and literally my first reaction was, "Are you kidding me?" Because like you said, Chris, and it's very unfortuitous of us, but we just never, the news never breaks while we record. It sometimes breaks later, and it always gets us pissed because it's well, now we got to wait a whole week, and everything's died down by then. But not this time, ladies and gentlemen. We're not going to let this opportunity slip from our fingers as it has in the past. We're going to talk about this news day of, night of, whatever the heck you want to call it. We're here to give a full breakdown of this trade. How long are we going to go? Who the heck knows? Because there's plenty to talk about with this deal. But let's get to just the straight facts and details of the case, of the trade in and of itself. Chris, case, I make it sound like we're going to break down a previous law case. And
it could be. It could be.
Well, there's definitely some breaking down that needs to be done here, especially on the Utah Jazz side. But let's get to the deal in and of itself. Earlier today, just hours ago, Adrian Wojnarowski tweeted and reported that Donovan Mitchell was traded to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Cleveland is sending the following package to the Utah Jazz. Forward Lauri Markkanen, rookie wing who they recently just drafted in this past 2022 NBA draft, Ochai Agbaji, guard Colin Sexton, who was a restricted free agent and was promptly signed by the Utah Jazz. We'll get to more on him in a little bit. 3 unprotected first-round picks in the years of 2025, 2027, and 2029, and 2 pick swaps in 2026 and 2028, meaning the Cleveland Cavaliers still have access to that 2024 first-round pick. I have no idea if they have their 2023 first-round pick. I'm assuming they do, unless they made a separate trade about that. We're going to learn about that throughout this episode.
Don't they not have it because of Karis LeVert?
Oh, okay, that might actually be it. That might be it. I forgot what his trade package was. But
yeah. Wait, I don't know. I don't know about the I don't know. I'm not sure about that because maybe it was the 2022nd. I don't know. I'm not sure.
We can double check that for all intents and purposes. But really, all that matters here, Chris, Donovan Mitchell was finally traded, and he was traded to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Now, we a couple times on the pod recently, one episode a little over a month ago, maybe 2 months ago at this point. Now, who knows? My timeline is completely screwed up, just like the MCU timeline. But we did recently talk about just you and me on an episode the idea of Donovan Mitchell going to either the Heat or the Knicks, and us talking about potential packages and various things like that. And then on, I believe, last week's episode, we talked about how the discussions were heating up between the Knicks and the Jazz, and we got Dame's opinion on it, but as well as yours and you guys, talking about the case and you being very vehement in your disdain, and as well as Dame's disdain for Danny Ainge was a big crux of the last episode, and I'm sure we're going to get plenty of that in this one. But before we get to Chris, I'll just kind of give my thing, because I think for me personally, Chris is the main event here. Chris normally lets me and Dame do the analysis, make the fireworks happen on the show, because he's I call him our fearless leader for a reason, because he is the perfect podcast host for us and leader of the crew. Really keeps me and Dame in line with all things. But this is going to be the Chris show eventually, because Chris was going to definitely have plenty to say about this topic. I'll just go with the basics before we get into the deeper details of the trade and what it could mean for all sides, not just the Jazz and the Cavs, but also the teams that were not involved and ultimately do not get Donovan Mitchell. But let's go to this basic thing first. For the Cleveland Cavaliers, a big acquisition. This is literally the biggest star name player that they've had on their team since LeBron. In terms of a multi-time All-Star, yes, Darius Garland was an All-Star last year, but in terms of a established multi-time All-Star, has been in the playoffs, has performed in the playoffs. Think back to the 2020 bubble and that absurd scoring series that he had against the Denver Nuggets. This is the biggest name that Cleveland has had since Braun. But really, the big thing here was, and I really hope this becomes a trend in sports, especially the NBA, a mid-level team. Let's be real here. Cleveland's a mid-level team making this kind of trade for a multi-time All-Star. And to pair Donovan Mitchell up, who's still very young, by the way, to pair him up with this young core of Darius Garland, who's going into his fourth season, if I'm not mistaken. Garland, who's going into year 4. Jared Allen, who's the defensive centerpiece of that team. Evan Mobley, who's coming off a Rookie of the Year caliber season. Didn't win Rookie of the Year, but he was a candidate for the award. Making all-rookie first team, showed some great offensive promise. And a guy in Isaac Okoro, who we are very familiar with, Chris, because the first work we did together was talking about Isaac Okoro's draft, and we both analyzed him plenty. To put Donovan Mitchell into that lineup and to have that team now solidified, to me, is a very big deal. Cleveland was almost a top 6 seed in the East last season. And when I say almost, I don't mean that, it looked like it could have been it for a while, but it actually wasn't. No, the Cavs, they faltered a little bit at the end of the season. They ended up finishing 44-38. The Chicago Bulls, who were the 6th seed, were 46-36. Cleveland was almost the 6th seed. And at one point they were actually, I think, the 6th seed, even if it was for just a very brief period of time. So this is a big deal for this Cleveland Cavaliers team that has really struggled to have a modicum of success for a long time, i.e. when LeBron is not on the squad. And this was a big time deal. And to say how much it means for Cleveland, I think cannot be overstated. But, and of course, the impact on the East that it'll have, we'll get to. But let me just get to the other basic side of this trade before we once again break it down in depth. For the Utah Jazz, of course, they had 2 big trade chips with Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell. We know the Rudy Gobert trade package. We discussed that on the podcast, and now this Donovan Mitchell. This was always the discussion of what were they going to get back, a combination of players and picks. Allegedly, I think from more recent things, it was more of a picks discussion that Danny Ainge and the Jazz had wanted for Donovan Mitchell. They get 5 picks. A little bit more into the future, we thought. No picks in the upcoming 2 drafts. Looks like Utah is mainly going to rely on their own capital and some of the Minnesota Timberwolves picks that they got in the Gobert trade. But this is them just essentially full rebuild, which it's funny because for a team like Utah, I think it's been a really long time since they've been in full rebuild mode. Utah is in one of those mid-level market teams that doesn't do fully rebuild because they know it's hard to do that in a market like Utah and keep fan interest. It just is. But they've decided to do it, and they have some pieces now from these previous from both of these trades. You get Colin Sexton, who, as I mentioned earlier, recently minted as a part of the sign-in trade, or was essentially a sign-in trade throw-in into this deal. He gets a 4-year, $72 million contract here. Ochai Agbaji, key piece to the Kansas Jayhawks national championship in this past college basketball season. First-round pick in this year's draft, gets sent over to the Utah Jazz. A young swing player, what he could potentially do for the team, sky's the limit, honestly, because now he's going to be able to fight for plenty of playing time here, which is going to be big. And there's a lot of other young pieces across this team. You got Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who especially you, Chris, have been a fan of in terms of keeping up for him. throughout the early portions of his career where he's been traded a few times. You have a Jared Butler, who, another former national champion on this team, who we had high praises for coming out of his draft year. You have Talen Horton-Tucker, who you recently got from the Patrick Beverley deal, who is still just 21 years old. You got, I forget if he was a second-round pick or like a undrafted free agent pickup, but Johnny Juzang, who came out of UCLA, very good player for the UCLA Bruins last year. And then you have Walker Kessler, who was the first round pick that you got in that Gobert deal. Jared Vanderbilt that you got in that Gobert deal. Essentially, what the Utah Jazz is this is a team full of just some veterans, but a lot of young pieces, a lot of young players are going to get the opportunity to show out here early in their careers, and it's going to be interesting. And this is the official complete teardown of the Utah Jazz that people have been calling for a while. And we probably thought we wouldn't see it, because if you look at other similar teams like Portland and Washington, we've been calling for the same thing, but those teams haven't pulled the trigger. Utah actually did, which I think makes it even more interesting. But let's go past the basics of this deal, Chris. Let's go into the nitty gritty. But before we get to maybe even the Jazz and Cavs themselves, if you want to take it into the Knicks conversation, I'm not going to stop you, brother, because I even asked you before the show. You had some emotions with this. We're saving it for recording. Take it away, Chris. Your reactions, thoughts, everything about the Donovan Mitchell trade.
Yeah, so I say we finish off with the Knicks.
Okay.
I did predict that a Donovan Mitchell trade would happen by Friday. I was a day off. I was off about a lot of things, actually. I was off about the team that he was going to get traded to. I was off by the day. I was off about my life, actually. So I assumed that they were going to do it before Labor Day weekend. Everything's done. Everyone can enjoy their weekend. No, none of that nonsense. All right, Mets just scored 2 runs. Sorry. I predicted it would be done before Labor Day, and to my credit, I got that right. But yeah, let's okay. I don't know where to start right now. Let's start off with the Cavs. I want to start with the Cavs.
I was gonna say go into the Cavs first. I kind of gave like the breakdown there, but I talked about the lineup, Chris. Just talk about Donovan Mitchell in that Cavs lineup.
Yeah. So if I'm the Cavs, I do this deal 100 times out of 10. Good for them. Funny enough, when we were talking about the Cavs offer, like if they could beat the Knicks offer, we kind of scoffed at it because we're just like, what picks are they going to offer? No shot. What players do they have to offer? There's no way the Cavs are getting Donovan Mitchell. And then, because I know there was reports the Cavs did talk to them, but I just didn't make anything of it, right? It was them and the Wizards that were like kind of outsiders lurking in, but it was always the media saying it's the Knicks to lose. So, I mean, this is a great deal for the Cleveland Cavaliers, man. Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell, my God, is that going to be such a fun backcourt to watch, bro. Putrid defensively. Oh my God, that's going to be a nightmare on the perimeter. However, you have, this is the thing though, like we could complain about the defensive
ineptitude.
Sure. All we want, but Isaac Okoro, Evan Mobley, and Jared Allen, dude, like they're gonna make up for a lot of the defensive inefficiencies, I'll say, that Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland obtain. They're gonna make up for it. I think Isaac Okoro was heavily important to this lineup for them, for the Cavs in particular, because like again, like we said, Garland and Mitchell being ass on defense at the perimeter, Okoro is gonna have to make up a lot of is gonna have to cover a lot of ground. Yeah. So he's really important to this lineup. But yeah, man, I am very, very bullish on this Cavs team. I think they're going to make the playoffs now.
Oh, for
because sure. I thought last year, like you said, Jurg, they got hit by the injury bug, and before that, they were on a roll, man. They were going to make the playoffs until like everyone started kind of getting hurt towards the end, and then they got knocked out in the playing game against Atlanta, and they had that game until the end, until Trae Young just kind of took it from them. But I mean, this is an improvement now. This is 100% an improvement. They're going to make the playoffs, but this is also a move that puts them at one of the top spots in the league in a post-Kevin Durant world, right? Especially in the East, I think they're going to be so dangerous in a few years, man. Yep. Dangerous. This team, like Donovan Mitchell's still young, bro. Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, we talk about like their lineup, but they have a lot of bench depth, man.
Yeah, and I think that's a big thing you brought up there, bringing up Chris. And Chris, like kind of to what you mentioned of us kind of scoffing at the Cavs, like what the trade offer could have been. I think the big thing for the both of us when we were discussing that potential idea was that we weren't sure if the Cavs had to give up Okoro, that if the Jazz were going to push for that, because I think we both agree if they lose Okoro in this trade, like, yes, it's still a good deal, but you lose that defensive wing that you heavily need. Because you said it best. Yes, Allen and Mobley are good, but you need that defensive wing in this lineup. And the fact they were able to keep Okoro, I think that's an even bigger win.
That's what I thought. He would be the main piece in a Donovan Mitchell trade, right? So they keep him. Like, I cannot believe they weren't going to trade Mobley or Jared Allen. Like, we knew that. Obviously, Darius Garland, he's untouchable. But those two I knew the Cavs highly covet. I knew they weren't gone. I was like, all right, so then it has to be Okoro. Like, you have to sacrifice one. Turns out they didn't need to sacrifice any of them. So this Cavs team is going to be dangerous in a few years, man. Like, I think they're going to make noise next year now with Donovan Mitchell. No doubt about it. But, like, because I think this team has a great combination of, like, offensive firepower with defense, man.
Right.
You know, so it's like, if I'm a Cavs fan, I'm ecstatic right now. And you make that trade. You make this trade, and, like, obviously we'll talk about the draft capital. You make this trade because you're Cleveland, right? You're Ohio.
Yeah.
Like, you're not gonna get that main star in free agency. What you do is that you suck for a few years. You draft well, which they did. Darius Garland turned out to be very great for them. He's an all-star. You get lucky, but you make the appropriate moves now. Right. And Kobe Allman, you got to give him credit. Did a phenomenal job building his team post LeBron. They kind of like they've been lurking behind the shadows, you know, organically building here and there. But like Rubio and Donovan Mitchell reunite, that's awesome. Kevin Love off the bench. Kevin Love, man, after years of just being disgruntled and just like not being able to get traded from the Cavs, I mean, it's got to be nice, right? Like, you get to stay there and just kind of bask in this newfound success from the Cleveland Cavaliers. So, but I don't know. I don't want to give praise to Kevin Love. He's a bitch too. But I think. Yeah, Cleveland, phenomenal job. A+ for them. All right, so let's talk about the Jazz. Mm-hmm. Dude, so if you take into account the protected picks, right?
Right.
With the Gobert trade and now the Donovan Mitchell trade, what is it, like 10 picks?
Yeah.
That's actually absurd. That is actually absurd. So I think they might have overtaken the crown, right? For like just hoarding picks from OKC. I don't know the number count, but like, dude,
I think OKC maybe still has more, but in terms of like in how many trades and unprotected, like,
I will give credit when it's due, man. They went, like you said, Jurg, they're doing things that the Blazers and the Wizards should have done. They knew they were going to be stuck in like purgatory, which is obviously the worst place to be, you know, in. As an NBA team, as a sports team in general.
Which, if you've listened to this podcast over like the course of our podcasting life, like, we very much are against purgatory teams.
Absolutely. That's why, and we'll have that discussion about the Chicago Bulls soon. But they were aware. They were aware, and getting 10 picks in one off season is nuts. Now, granted, a lot of that came at the expense of the idiocy of the Minnesota Timberwolves. We didn't expect that Gobert would net them 5 picks, but you know what? Like, you take advantage of idiotic people. That's what you do. That's what smart people do. So, I mean, props to them. They have their treasure chest of draft picks, and they might be. You know what I find funny about this, bro, is that like the race for Victor, for Big Vic,
right,
is going to be so fun to watch now because. The draft lottery system's different now, so no one's guaranteed like a top 3 pick anymore if you like finish.
Right.
Like them and OKC, and I think the Spurs are going to be on that. They're going to, like, even if you don't get the first pick, they're going to be on the phone trading up, offering everything possible.
Yeah.
So that's going to be fun to watch. It's a cool storyline, kind of sub storyline that no one's really going to pay attention to except us. But I think it's going to be fun to watch. I think they're in the driver's seat right now. I still think OKC is going to be worse than Utah, actually, because they just lost Chet Holmgren. Who knows? Ponzi scheme Presti might sit out shy sooner than expected. But yeah, in terms of the players they got back, Lauri Markkanen, Utah's going to love him for reasons I don't know. I think you guys could guess why. But
he's Finnish.
Sure. But Lauri Markkanen, Colin Sexton. Sexton was like a wild card this offseason, right? He was looking for a big payday. I think the Cavs were lowballing him. You think like 3 for $40 was like an offer I read somewhere. And again, Colin is coming off a knee injury, so you kind of don't know where he's going to be at. But we talked about this, Jurg. It's The offer in terms of the players for Utah to get back in a possible Donovan Mitchell deal, when we discussed this a few weeks ago, even a month ago, we wanted to know, like, are they gonna want to suck, or are they gonna want that, like, one player so they could at least ensure ticket holders that it's not gonna be as bad, right?
Right.
And I think Sexton is that guy. And Grant, he is young. I don't want people to think like Sexton's a scrub. He's actually not, right? I just think there's a little bit of uncertainty. They sign him. Well, it was like a sign and trade. So it was 4 years, $72 million. He's their guy, obviously. They have Malik Beasley. Who else did they obtain anyone else in the trade? I know Lauri Markkanen, but like you said, the draft pick. I don't know what's his name.
Agbaji.
Yeah. So I mean, we're fans of him. So I mean, yeah. And I completely forgot THT got traded to them. So they have a bunch of these young players. It's like fake. We're gonna be decent, but like we kind of just need to ensure that we're not gonna be awful to make it seem like we're not like purposely tanking. So I mean, Sexton, Lauri Markkanen, Malik Beasley, THT. I don't know who their center is right now. Whatever. I guess it's like a little fun, little nice young core to like watch until like you see if you get Victor or not.
Right.
Again, they don't care about the players as much. They got their picks. Like that's
Yeah.
the main story here. They got their 10 draft picks. That's what they want. That's what they got.
And if the players become something, it's just a plus for the team.
Absolutely, it's a plus. So if Colin Sexton, becomes who he was starting to look like before the injury, and you could like and then they strike gold and get Big Vic, you have a nice little young nucleus that you can kind of play with, right? Like that's your team going forward. I don't have much to say about the Jazz other than that. I mean, do you have anything else?
I want to play a little funny game here, Chris. It'll be real quick. So I'm looking at the Utah Jazz roster, and I'm looking at two different things. I'm looking at players on the team that are 30 and above right now, and I'm looking at guys on the team that are less than 25 years old. So I don't mean 25 and below. I mean 24 and below. How many players, just off the guess, Chris, how many players do you think are 30 or more on the Utah Jazz right now?
Mike Conley.
Mm-hmm.
Bogdanovich.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know who's on the Jazz, to be honest. I'm going to go 3.
So they have 5.
What?
It's Bogdanovich. It's Jordan Clarkson. He's 30.
Clarkson's 30? Wow.
Yeah. It's Mike Conley. Like you said, it's Rudy Gay.
Oh my God, Rudy Gay.
And the last one, Hassan Whiteside. Which the silence speaks for itself.
Hassan Whiteside's on the team?
Yeah, he's showing up on the roster for me. So Hassan Whiteside's a member of the Utah Jazz.
And granted, there is a report, I think Woj tweeted, that the Jazz are trying to get rid of all these dudes.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like this is the thing, and when we made the Blazers and Wizards comparison, the Jazz not only have the first round picks from those two deals, they could get a first for Jordan Clarkson, they could get a first for Bogdanovich. The other guys maybe not so much, but they could still get at least 2 more first round picks out of.
Oh yeah, deals. I mean they're gonna be protected probably, because I don't think a team's gonna give an unprotected first for Bogdanovich or Mike Conley. I meant Clarkson more so. I don't think Mike Conley. I think this is the thing. So this is the second half of the game, real quick. How many players? Just give me a number. Don't name me the players. How many players on the team right now, Chris, are 24 years old or less? On the Jazz?
On the Jazz.
Oh wait. Is Markkanen even 24?
He's 25, so he barely doesn't qualify.
Colin.
He's 23.
Okay, barely. Malik Beasley?
25.
Oh my God.
Just give me a number.
All right, so you said 5 are
30 or below, 30 more. Remember,
I'm going to go 4. I'm going to go 4.
That are 24 or below. And the answer is way off. The Utah Jazz have 11 players on the roster right now that are 24 years old or below.
Screw it, bro. If you're going to rebuild, you might as well do it like that.
Oh, yeah. And this is my thing. I don't think they could get a first out of Mike Conley. I think, like, to me, Mike Conley, if I had to compare it to other leagues, like how in the NHL you have to give up draft picks to get rid of contracts, I think if to convince a team to take Mike Conley, I think you need to give up something. They have the first round picks to give up if they need to.
His contract is OD, right?
I think Utah has the young pieces that they could just be like, hey, you could like take Mike Conley's contract, but let's give you 2 guys that are 24 or younger.
Yes.
Think about that. So this and look, here's the thing. It's nice to have all these pieces. At the end of the day, not all these guys are going to be on this team forever. Of the 11 guys I just said who are 24 or below, like how many of them are going to make it past the next 2 years? But what it's all about is now asset management, and I think that's always a big deal that we're talking about. And this is my last point on the Jazz before we continue here, Chris, is that now you're in the asset management phase of your franchise. when it comes to getting rid of all-stars, once you've done that, it's all about managing what you have on your roster and your draft picks now. And I think this is the biggest thing. This is going to ultimately determine the success or failure of Danny Ainge's time with the Utah Jazz. Spoiler, we're hoping for the latter rather than the former. But like, this is going to determine Danny Ainge, and I think this is going to be a real test to see how he is as a general manager. Look, I've said it before, I'll say it again. I think he really got lucky with the Celtics and during his time there. I said it on the pod last week, and I'll say it again. Danny Ainge has never ever been in the position where he didn't have the complete leverage in terms of trading when it comes to star players, right? He had the leverage with Ray Allen and KG because they both wanted to just leave Minnesota and Seattle respectively. I may have flipped the players and teams there, but irregardless. And then when it came to trading, the Nets were pressured. Remember, they were pressured to make a big deal, and that's how he was able to fleece them out of Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett, who Pierce left after a year. KG stayed, but he was nothing. And I think they got like Gerald Wallace and like Jason Terry in that deal too. Not great. Hindsight 2020 here.
Yeah.
Or maybe Gerald Wallace went the other way to Boston, actually. Irregardless, like, he has never been the guy who has had to make the trade with the unhappy superstar. He just had to make that technically twice, although I'm not going to call Gobert a superstar. So he just had to do that. We'll see what the Utah Jazz can build here in terms of using these picks, using these guys. How long is this rebuild going to last? Because it's Utah, Chris, and this could go one of two ways. Either Utah somehow going to figure out a way to get back in a playoff picture in 3 years, or they're going to be a futile team for a decade. It's one or the other. You either get a quick rebuild or you really plan out long term. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Utah. And just maybe last point on the Cavs, because I kind of mentioned the idea in passing, but I think the reason why this is such a big deal for the Cavs here, Chris, think about LeBron's first run, not the second run, the first run.
Yeah.
They could never get this trade. There were rumors that they were trying to trade for Amari Stoudemire and Chris Bosh within the final years of LeBron's tenure on the Cavs, but neither guy wanted to play in Cleveland. Neither guy was going to commit long-term to staying in Cleveland. Because at the time, let's be real here, it was just LeBron, and he hadn't won any championships yet. Like, that team was nothing. And then in the second tenure, yes, they make the trade for Kevin Love. He's the multi-time All-Star out of Minnesota, averaging all these rebounds. But they did that. They got that because they had LeBron again, and they had those, former first overall picks that they used in Anthony Bennett and Andrew Wiggins that again were more enticing, and that Cleveland did that deal because they got LeBron back. So in terms of no definitive superstar on the team, like, yes, Darius Garland is nice. Yes, Jared Allen is a great defensive player. And yes, Evan Mobley is young. But for the Cavs, to me, to make this kind of trade, I think is a very big deal. And I think this was I think Adam Silver was smiling when he saw this trade. I really do think so, because commissioners are always talking about parity. And let's be honest, sometimes half the time they really don't give a damn. But I think Adam Silver was happy to see this, because this is a mid-level team and a mid-level market.
Yeah, for sure.
Making a big-time trade. And I think it could be a really good thing for the NBA. And like you said, this could be a really good thing for Cleveland in terms of the future of the playoffs for them. I think we've said all the...
I do want to say one thing.
Continue.
Man, this is way too much Cleveland praise. Because Ohio, that's cesspool. Well, I am happy for them. Like, this, I am rejuvenated as a Cavs fan. Like, you were building something, right? And now you get Donovan Mitchell, and it's like, holy shit, this is a possibility now. Success, permanent success. I think you're right. I do think parity, huge thing in the NBA. Adam Silver smiling. I don't think he's as happy as he would be if he got traded to the Knicks, because that would have been a lot more money in his pocket.
True.
Let's be honest. But you're right. I do think this is. I like that it's not. We always talk about the Bucks, the Heat, the Sixers, the Nets. Am I missing a team in the East?
76ers? Oh, wait, you said them.
Celtics.
Celtics, right.
Now you have to put Cleveland there.
Yeah.
The East is a death threat. Now, I talked about this, them being ready for a post-Kevin Durant NBA landscape, right? I think the Cleveland Cavaliers, and you call me crazy, have... I don't know how long it'll be until Kevin Durant starts to fall off a bit. I don't think it'll fall off completely because he's that gifted of a scorer, but I think they have the tools of a team that could neutralize Giannis. Right? That's why I think they could compete with the Bucks in 2 years' time. I don't know what 2 years is going to do essentially, but Garland we think is going to get better. Gel a little bit more with the team. There'll be a lot more chemistry, of course, but
right.
And maybe you'll do some off-season moves where you kind of add that a great six man. Not to bag on Rubio, but it's Rubio, right?
Well, LeVert is the scorer. I mean,
I
he's not a
forgot.
bad
Yeah, they have LeVert too. Now, LeVert might be the odd man out here because of like. I mean, granted, he's going to come off the bench, but like you got to keep one of Donovan Mitchell or Garland on the court at all times, right?
Mhm.
So he might be the one that has to sacrifice touches with the Rock, but I think that team is built to compete with the Bucks. As weird as that sounds, I don't know why. I do know why. It's because I believe in the front court of Mobley and Jared Allen.
Right.
Because the game plan is there to neutralize Giannis. The Heat have done it.
Yeah.
That's where the gap occurs because you need perimeter defenders to be guarding the Chris Middletons and the Drew Holiday, which is not the case with Garland and Donovan Mitchell. But again, you give it a few years, maybe you find some some defenders off the bench, you
Right.
snag in free agency. But I do think the tools are there for them to compete with the Bucks. I know I'm getting extremely ahead of myself, extremely,
No.
but
I don't think you are necessarily because I mean, you're saying 2 years ahead for a reason.
yeah.
But like the thing is here, Chris. So let's okay. You talk about the formula to take down potentially Giannis. It's Evan Mobley, who's 6'11" and has a 7-foot wingspan. It's Jared Allen, who we know is one of the best defensive centers in the game. Jared Allen, Robert Williams, Bam Adebayo are the 3 best defensive centers in basketball today. And if you think it's not those 3, like what are you smoking? And I have some friends that would like it because there is no chance in the world. There's no chance in the world that those are not the top 3 defensive centers in the league now. They have Moses Brown off the bench. He's 7'2".
I forgot about Moses Brown.
Who's a very good role player. I don't know why teams have let him go so many times. He is a 7'2" role player who I think will be good. And again, like this may be more for the Middleton guard, but Isaac Okoro, 6'5", has like what's his wingspan, like 6'10".
He could do damage on the perimeter.
He was the best perimeter defender coming out of his draft. We sung his praises then. We're gonna sing it again. This is the thing, Chris, because I think you need to like you talk about like going ahead like two to 3 years here. Like if we look at the East in 2 to 3 years, like let's just look at the top of the East. We've really been doing this a lot on shows lately, but let's just look at the Eastern Conference in 2 to 3 years. Like from what the East was this past season, the Miami Heat were the first seed. Look, love my team. Bam will be better in 2 years. Tyler will be better in 2 years.
But will Jimmy be better in 2 years?
That's the thing. He's not. He's going to decline. Kyle Lowry's not going to be there in 2 years. Like
the Heat are. I mean, that's a different conversation. But I would be a little.
I think I'm more than realistic. Like I said at the start, I'm a realistic Heat fan. I think we're going to fall off in the next. Like I think the next 2 or 3 years for Miami is big.
Riley will fix
the next 2. Oh, I mean, I have the faith, but at the same time, like I think there's going to be a downturn for the Heat eventually. So in 2 years, let's just say up or down. In 2 years, Miami down. The Boston Celtics were the second seed. They have Brown. They have Tatum. Yes, they have a good core.
They'll be fine, I think.
They'll be fine. So let's just say middle for now, right? So it's up, down, same. So Celtics, same. The Bucks have Giannis, same. The Philadelphia 76ers.
I don't buy it. I think their window's close to being done.
I think it's limited. I think Harden is there on a short-term deal. It depends on if like what happens when Maxey is eventually up in 2 years. If Embiid is still healthy in 2 years, I would tentatively put them as down for now.
Me too. I'm with you.
And so the Raptors, I know there's the foundation there with some of the pieces they have.
But they're not. They don't have the guy.
Exactly, and it's also like Siakam and Van Vliet in 2 to 3 years.
No,
they're going to be kind of at the end. Like, here's the thing: when we talk about the peaks of athletes, in theory, they all start at 25, 26. Not everyone, when we talk about their quote unquote peak, is an all-star. And I think those are 2 guys there in Van Vliet and Siakam. In 2 to 3 years, they're still fine players, but they're not going to be the guy. So I would say Toronto is middle/slightly down. The Chicago Bulls.
Nope. Let's move on.
Yes, exactly. The 7th seed, the Brooklyn Nets. In 2 to 3 years, Kevin Durant could still be a really good player, but is he still going to be the caliber of player he is now? We don't know. Kyrie Irving will hopefully have retired in 2 to 3 years and gone to like, give me a random country here. Moldova.
Wow.
He'll have found like a random house to have built in Moldova, and he'll just live out the rest of his basketball days there, just dribbling a basketball randomly, hopefully. And who knows? And Steve Nash will be fired in 2 to 3 years as well, because when KD and Kyrie aren't there anymore, there's no reason for Steve Nash to be there. Trae Young and the Atlanta Hawks.
Possibly.
It really depends. Then Cleveland was the 9th seed. I see in 2 to 3 years.
Yep.
The opportunity to be a definitive top 4 easily in the East team.
Yep.
I do. Yep. And I think this is the genius of it for Cleveland. Be a good team the next 2 years. Donovan Mitchell is for sure there for 3 years. So it's 3 years plus then a player option. So convince him when that time comes to extend. By then you'll also have to extend Mobley. Allen, I think, will be at the end of his extension, so you're probably going to have to sign him. And I think Garland will at least still have a couple more years left. So you have a 2-year window of developing the chemistry on this team. And then you get a window after that once you get guys signed to then take that next, like the step after. I think for Cleveland, you want to talk about being in a potential. This is the key thing here, because potential is a very tricky thing in sports, Chris. I think you talk about the potential of it being a dream scenario for you. Cleveland is in the perfect spot for it right now.
Oh yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure. But like you said, Jurg, I do think I said before, like, I don't think Mitchell is going to stay there after his contract ends, but they have a wonderful opportunity to prove to him that he should stay. Right? If you're creating a winner there, right, and you're going to grow with these dudes, they're basically going to be like, there's not much of a reason for you to leave right now. Like, these guys are just going to get better, right? Yeah. They're going to enter their prime by the time you're done with your contract. Why leave? East is getting, like we just said, is getting a bit weaker. Durant's gone. Kyrie, who knows? The only team that we're going to have to compete with is the Boston Celtics. And, of course, because we have faith in Riley, let's just say the Miami Heat, right?
And the Milwaukee Bucks.
Right, the Milwaukee Bucks, right there. So that's 3 teams. And you have the foundation to compete with each and every single one of those teams. Why not? Why not just stay with us? Like, I get it, it's Cleveland. And by the way, going from Utah to Ohio, bro, not the best. Like, I feel so bad for him, like, environment-wise. I mean, it's obviously you leave Utah, which is a huge plus, and that's already a win in itself. But going to Cleveland, I know for a fact, initially he was like, are you fucking kidding me? I know for a fact. But then he, like, kind of, emotions
puts in perspective.
Yeah, then he's just like, all right, the roster ain't that bad here. It's not gonna be horrible. But we know you want in New York.
Right.
And speaking of New York,
well, also, like, my bad to cut you off before you get to it. I don't mean to cut you off.
No,
like,
you're good.
Just the idea. I think there are a couple things going in Cleveland's way here. A, there's the young roster, like you said. B, it's not Utah, and then C, there's no Rudy Gobert. It's like if in 2 years this team develops well and there's chemistry and they go to Donovan Mitchell and talk with him, like, look, here are the things that have happened in the last 2 years. You've played with these guys. You've got the chemistry. We've had some success. Also, this is not Utah, and we will never trade for Rudy Gobert. I think if they make those promises, I think he'll be willing to sign that extension in a couple years down the line. I'm just saying. But no, clearly, like, obviously with superstars, it's a very tricky thing. I think Donovan Mitchell, if you're talking about, and these guys always claim to want to be in the competitive situation. If you really want to be competitive, Donovan Mitchell, I'm just saying, like, I hate to be that, like, I feel like I'm going to sound like cliche old white man sports radio guy. But if you really want to be competitive and be in the best situation possible, I don't see a situation that's going to be better in two years than the Cleveland Cavaliers, unless you join like a Milwaukee or a Boston. But that's probably not realistic. So, like, it just this is such a good situation, and I really hope that Donovan Mitchell doesn't get in his own way. That's all I'm going to say in regards to that. I think that's going to be my final piece. I don't think there's too much else to say on both sides. I think we covered
that's enough.
The Jazz and the Cavs thoroughly, especially with praising the Cavs, which I think this is the most we've ever praised the city of Cleveland.
Yeah, this is all you're getting, Cleveland.
Oh, yeah, because the NFL season's coming up and the Browns are going to get zero praise on this podcast. Chris, throw it to you. I'm not going to mute, but like I'm not going to interrupt you. This is full you. Speak for Dame, speak for whatever portion of Knicks Twitter you want to, because I know you don't represent all of Knicks Twitter because that's a cesspool in certain portions. But my brother in Christ, in an NBA, talk about your feelings on Donovan Mitchell. Confirmed he will not be a New York Knick.
Well, here we go. How do I describe how I'm feeling? I'm indifferent right now, Jurg. So obviously when you first see the report that he gets traded to Cleveland, my first, feeling is sadness. Just 2 months of honey dicking and just it's all but confirmed that he's going to go to the Knicks. Like, it's going to be tough now because he signed with RJ. It's just the road's a lot harder, but I just, at the end of the day, I do see him going to New York. This has been when did it start? One of the first Shams report, Shams came out, in June, that they started touching base on like a Donovan Mitchell trade?
Probably.
And now we're in September now. We're in September, right? So this is off the heels of Kevin Durant deciding to stay in Brooklyn because no one wanted to overpay for his bitch ass. So sadness because we don't get Donovan Mitchell, because I like Donovan Mitchell a lot. I actually do love him. I actually love Donovan Mitchell, right? I have said before, and this is brutal honesty, he's not a guy that could win you a championship as your number one, but I still love him. Like, he's a great dude, it seems like, and he's just fun to watch. I actually love Donovan Mitchell. right? I'm professing my love for him. He's really fun to watch. A great dude. And I think that him being from New York, he would have done wonders for us, right? Hometown kid. He dons the orange and blue. It felt like it was meant to be, right? He just seemed like a New York Knick. And he would have embodied the city, obviously. He's got a great personality for it. It would have been fun to watch him with RJ. So, yeah, I'm upset that he's not a Knick. I think I was hesitant because I didn't want to overpay for Donovan Mitchell. But because you're negotiating with the terrorists like Danny Ainge, you knew you were going to have to overpay to get Donovan Mitchell, right? Various reports came out on what the Knicks were offering and what the Jazz were looking for. It was like initial asking point was like 5 picks, this and that. The Knicks offered like Obi, Evan Fournier, someone else, and like 2 unprotected first, 3 protected first. Jazz didn't take that. Talks were at a stalemate, this and that, and I was like, I don't know what the Jazz are looking for. Like, I didn't know how this would get done, but I knew it was going to get done just because there was so much smoke, right? There's no, like, this is one of the very rare times that, like, a trade proposal has so much smoke, but it doesn't happen. It's just absurd. I cannot believe this didn't happen at the end of the day. Like, I can't believe this didn't happen. Like, how is he not a Knick, right? After all that I've been hearing and after all we've been reading, like, it's just absurd to me that he just didn't end up being in New York. This is my fault because I'm an idiot. I told myself that after LeBron signed with Miami, I'm like, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this like rumor mill. I'm not going to get excited. I'm not going to tamper my expectations. No. And then I broke my own rule in 2019 when all the rumors said that Kevin Durant is all but confirmed going to the Knicks. There was just so much smoke. I'm like, oh, it's happening, bro. We traded away like Porzingis and everyone else to clear up cap space. In hindsight, I still think the Knicks overwhelmingly won that deal. You're an idiot if you think otherwise, to be honest. We didn't get Kevin Durant. He goes to Brooklyn. So I'm like, okay, I'm not doing this shit anymore. And then this happens. And what do? I fall for it once again. The media hype got me. I had the expectation that he was going to New York, and he doesn't end up going to the Knicks. I could live with that. That's fine. He's not a Knick. Stars, like, I've been living like 25 years in this earth, and like I haven't seen like, I'm sorry, I don't count Amari Stoudemire. Carmelo Anthony wasn't huge on him either, bro. That one guy, that one like young dude that could embrace New York like no other. Donovan Mitchell, just the likable star that he is, the entertainment, the moxie, the flash that he has. It's perfect for New York. Then he doesn't end up going. This is my fault. I need to stop doing this shit. I bought into the hype. This is my fault completely. And friend of mine, Mirza, he said it best. He doesn't read into this shit anymore. That's why when he said when the rumors were happening that he wasn't like gonna get excited nor he wasn't gonna get depressed because he's like, I'm gonna set my expectations as low as possible. And that's what I need to start doing now because this is just absurd, right? So that's my take on the media hype, right? My fault. And I don't watch ESPN or any of that. But like when you have the Knicks beat reporters and the Jazz beat reporters saying they're coming to a close, but they're at a stalemate, but it probably will happen. This is my fault for being on Twitter too much. So I need to cut that shit off. All right. Again, I was very cognizant of what the Knicks would offer for Donovan Mitchell. I was fine with 2 unprotected firsts, 3 protected firsts, Evan Fournier, good riddance, and whatever. Like, and at least 1 young player. I was like, fine, I'll do that. I will do that. And if you have to add like a Miles McBride, and by the young player, it was either going to be like IQ, Obi, or Quentin Grimes, one of them, and then a Miles McBride. I was like, fine, I'll just do that. I don't care at this point. That doesn't happen. The Jazz want more. I'm like, okay, then never fucking mind. Then you guys, I don't know what we're going to do to get this shit done. Then it's reported that the Jazz wanted 3 unprotected first, and I came to a point last night where I'm like, 3 unprotected first is OD, man. Like, you're literally mortgaging your future, right? But then I'm just like, screw it. If it means giving up less players, then just whatever. Let's just do Grimes and like 3 unprotected first and like 2 protected first. Let's just do that. Get this over with. Donovan Mitchell comes home. Get to pair him up with RJ. Sorry, I'm not high on Brunson like that. But that's where I kind of like, that was where my head was at, right? And then this is where the concern comes for me, right? I think there. So by the way, we didn't talk about this because we did an episode just strictly NFL. RJ Barrett re-signed with the Knicks on Monday night. Right. It was 4 years of $120 million. Those are included with incentives. It's $107 million is the actual number, but I think with an all-star appearances and like in defensive teams, the most he get is $120 million. But he signed for 4 years, $107 million in actuality, right? And that's when like shit kind of like hit the fan because it's just like, oh shit, are they taking RJ off the table now? And I think the Knicks gave the Jazz the deadline. If we don't get this shit done by Monday, we're re-signing RJ. I am concerned now because apparently they were offering RJ. It was the initial reports say that they were. This is Shams, by the way. It was RJ and 2 unprotected first. They added an RJ so that they don't have to add any more picks. So like that's their reasoning as to not adding any more picks. And I was like, ooh, I do not like that because I do not want to give up RJ. We stressed that enough in this podcast. So they did that. The Jazz declined, and I'm like, okay, I'm not happy right now. And then they re-sign him, and only in Knicks land can RJ re-sign. And when RJ re-signed, I was ecstatic, by the way. I was doing jumping jacks. I was hugging my father. That doesn't
on a really good deal, too.
Really good deal. I'm like, yes, this is my guy. Finally breaks the Charlie Ward curse. This is it. He's our guy. He's going to stay here for 4 more years. And then Shams comes out, and then I hear these naysayers saying, well, he could still be part of the deal. And I'm like, bro, what? Why? It's the poison pill contract, by the way. It's just that the Jazz would obviously take his like salary. It would be $26 million, $10 million outgoing for us, $26 million incoming for them, right? So that's what the poison pill is. And I'm like, how is RJ still on the table? But then you have like the Ian Begleys of the world and the Mark Burns of the world saying, no, he's off the table. He's like, it just makes the Knicks route to get Donovan Mitchell more complicated, but they still see them getting him. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what the deal is now, right? Because it seems like they were very hesitant to include Grimes. And the whole time I'm thinking to myself, all right, at least the Knicks are standing strong here. And then Donovan Mitchell gets traded to the Cavs today. And then reports come out. This is my indifference here. This is where my indifference pulls up because I have praised this front office for not overpaying, for standing strong. If a star or a player becomes available, do your due diligence, do your homework, but if it costs too much, don't do it. And then I actually read this like before we started recording. Their final offer for Donovan Mitchell was RJ Barrett, and I know you don't think too highly of him, but it was RJ Barrett, IQ,
okay,
Evan Fournier as like the salary dump, 2 unprotected firsts,
okay,
and they were willing to part ways with a third first, but it had to be top 5 protected. So protected, but not crazy protected, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Jazz declined. Apparently, they wanted more. I think they wanted Grimes as well. Now, granted, I don't know if this was an offer after RJ signed the extension or before. I am assuming it would be before. But I'm like, holy fuck, that is a massive overpay. Wild overpay. As a Knicks fan, I am heavily concerned. People would be like, well, at least they didn't end up overpaying, but I'm more concerned that they were willing to part ways with that package. Like, bro, what?
Right.
It completely shifted my feelings towards this front office. Like, now they're on thin ice to me. Now I don't know what to think of them because that's a wild card type of move. Now you just show to me that you just want a quick fix. For some reason, you think Brunson is the second coming of Christ, which I don't understand. Really good player. I just don't understand why. Like, a Mitchell and Brunson backcourt? What? You talk about second round ceiling galore. That would have guaranteed us, like, max second ceiling. Right? And if you give away RJ, like, I mean, I guess you start Grimes at the 3, but wouldn't the objective be to pair Donovan Mitchell with RJ and I guess Jalen Brunson since you love him so much? Why would you do that? And you get rid of quickly too? I am just disgusted and appalled by the front office at wanting to get rid of those guys for Donovan Mitchell. Like, I understand the objective here and like the reason that they were brought here was to bring a star to New York, but bro, at what price? It's not Luka Doncic, man. And I understand that as a Knicks fan, you overvalue your RJ Barretts of the world and your Emmanuel Quickly's. Every person does it with their favorite team. They just overvalue their young guys. But dude, it's very concerning to me that they were willing to part ways with their guy, their best player that they've drafted in God knows how long. Like, what are we doing here? I don't know what the objective is. I really don't. And so that scares me. Now going forward, I don't have as much faith in them. It's actually really bad now at this point because that's just inexcusable. That's just uncalculable rage in my end that you were willing to give away IQ and RJ Barrett, who have been like your two lone bright spots the last 3 years, man. So very, very skeptical in the front office. And I'll hand it over to you in a bit, Jurg. But my final question would be, and by the way, I'm just ecstatic that so RJ Barrett stays. I hope, right? I mean, at this point, it's likely that he's the Knick going forward. So I am, as an RJ Barrett enthusiast and a super fan, I'm happy that he stays. He's our guy. He deserves that money. I think he's been very underrated from NBA analysts and people that just cover basketball, which is fine. I like that. I don't want him being in the overhype crowd. What's plan B? Like, what's next for the Knicks? Because I don't know if they had a plan B, right? I said this before. I would love for them to get their hands on Shai. I just don't know how likely that is because I don't know if Prestige just like wants to full out tank at this point, or maybe he just wants to see like maybe give it a year before he wants to see what's good with him, Chet Holmgren, how that would look like with Josh Giddey. But I don't know what plan B is. I really don't. It's just like, it's plan B shifting your focus on like another star, but like you can't bank off like a star being disgruntled, this easily, man.
Right.
Like, I know stars get disgruntled every day, but realistically, who's worth trading that you think is going to get disgruntled besides Shai, right? And, Presti's going to want his treasure chest of picks now that he has competition with Utah. So, like, what? And my thing is, the Knicks have hoarded all these draft picks. Granted, a lot of them are, like, the protected picks from, like, the Denvers of the world and, like, the Pistons of the world. But you do that for the opportunity to trade for a star, right? This was that opportunity. You don't trade for him because you don't want to give them any picks. But at some point, like, what's the point of hoarding all these picks? And granted, like I said before, I'm not keen on Donovan Mitchell being that guy to just, like, kill your whole next 5 years for. But the idea of just, like, hoarding all these picks, what do you do now? What do you use them for, bro? Because nothing's certain here. You're not going to get KD. You're not going to get Donovan Mitchell now. Who knows when Shai's going to be available? I don't want Cat, but Cat's probably going to stay. They're not probably going to give him up. They're probably going to experiment with him and Gobert. Give me another young player, Jurg. Not Tyler Hero. Sorry.
Wait. My bad. Of which caliber?
Just like a young budding star that you think could be disgruntled.
That I think could be disgruntled. I mean,
there's not a lot.
They're just De'Aaron Fox. But you already have Brunson.
But they're not. Yeah, exactly, right? And I don't think I think they're putting him too much stock. And like I think they traded Halliburton so they could focus on Fox to focus on rebuilding over with Fox. But
I mean,
there's no one. I don't know what Plan B is now besides Shai, and that's not certain to me. So I don't. Okay, so let me just simplify how I'm feeling. I'm indifferent. I wanted Donovan Mitchell. I didn't want the Knicks to overpay. The Knicks didn't end up overpaying. The offer that they sent, their latest offer, to me, is an absolute overpay. The Jazz might have saved the Knicks from themselves by not accepting this deal. Because as a Knicks enthusiast, giving up RJ, IQ, and 3 first-round picks is absurd. So I'm more concerned that the front office was willing to do that than us not getting Donovan Mitchell. That's where I stand. And my final point, as I said, I don't know what plan B is because you have hoarded all these picks. You have telegraphed all your offseason moves. You have a treasure chest of draft picks. Granted, some of them are protected, some of them are not. What do you do with them now? Because you use them for moments like this. This moment has come and gone. You don't get Donovan Mitchell. He's in the East, right?
Right.
The Knicks are in like they're going to compete for a 10th spot right now. Yeah. As of right now, you compete for that's your ceiling. The 10th spot is your ceiling.
Yeah.
This is I'm very curious to where this team goes now because if this signifies a youth movement, but with Tom Thibodeau as your head coach, that's not guaranteed. That is not guaranteed, man.
That's also not the ideal coach that you want.
It's not the ideal coach, bro. Like, I don't know where we go from here. And it's so infuriating that there's uncertainty, but that this front office was willing to make a move for the worst price possible to me. So I'm indifferent. I'm not pleased. I'm not enthusiastic. This is on top of not getting Donovan Mitchell. I just trading Julius Randle would be the next step. I just don't know how likely that is because I don't know which team is willing to take that piece of shit. Trading Evan Fournier, 2 years left, and I think like he has a team option, so it's a little bit easier to trade him. But again, who's feeding for Evan Fournier besides like a team that would be like the Lakers, right? But what are the Lakers going to offer me for Evan Fournier? I mean, maybe just to get him off the books at that point, I'd
Kendrick
be fine.
Nunn?
Stop that. So I'm just at a crossroads right now. I don't know. Like that's why I said I'm indifferent. Like from what I just said, you can't tell whether I'm pissed or not. But go ahead, Jurg. I'm dying.
Yeah, like very interesting. So I wasn't privy to the information that the Knicks' final offers were including RJ, and with the idea of the contract being a potential sign and trade in there. Like it was RJ, IQ, Evan Fournier, and 2 firsts, and potentially putting in a third that would have. Man, that's interesting. And I think it really just goes down to it, Chris. And I think it was when we talked about a couple weeks ago with Dame, where, or not a couple weeks, last week, excuse me, where Danny Ainge just wanted more draft picks. And it's like, I get the idea of picks, but I think in every single league, well, at least the leagues where you could trade picks now, because in Major League Baseball, you can't trade draft picks. But in the NFL, the NHL, and the NBA, I feel like draft picks are a very like some people just don't value them.
It's
And
crazy, bro. I don't know when did you start watching basketball, Jurg?
06.
Dude, do you remember like in 06 to like 2010 draft picks were not valued as much as they are now? Like it is crazy how like the shift is. Like how the gap is between like the value of draft picks back then to now.
Yeah,
Just wow.
guys would trade first, like freaking the Chicago Bulls.
Sorry.
Oh, I thought you hit something. You mentioned it, Chris. Like the Chicago Bulls made several, like they traded several first round picks to get Tyrese Thomas, and one of those first round picks became LaMarcus Aldridge. I think Eddie Curry going into that draft, there was like some draft shenanigans that happened with that pick for the Chicago Bulls.
Don't mention that name, please.
I'm sorry, but I mean it was the Bulls' mistake, not Nick. But like it's just to me the utter insanity of what first round picks has become in the NBA compared to the other two sports. Let's be real here. In the NFL, no one gives a dang about the first round picks. The Super Bowl champions from last season haven't had a first round pick since the last presidential administration. like, like it's insane. And in the NHL, it's kind of like a hit or miss thing, but like I think to this past NHL trade deadline, I forget who the player was. I think it was the Seattle Kraken traded just like a regular defenseman, like not a special player at all, for a second round pick. I'm like, how the hell did this defenseman get a second round pick? And it just really made me think like, holy, like just teams don't like the value of a first round pick is going down. And this is a thing in all the sports. And because the NBA and the NHL and the NFL both have 2 rounds at least. Of course, the NFL is more, but like the NFL and the NHL more, but like just going on the first 2 rounds, the pick value from like middle of the first round to like early middle of the second round. And once again, it's a little bit different in the NFL and the NHL because of the 7 rounds, but the draft value that you really have between the mid first to early second, it's you're splitting hairs when it comes to that value. So the fact in the NBA that the first round picks have become such a critical piece into these superstar trades. And I think the big thing that you talked about, Chris, is the whole Kevin Durant thing where GMs refuse to set that next level of precedent. I don't think GMs want to set a new level for a guy of KD's stature. I think like things always go up and down. I think at some point there's going to be a drop back down into what all stars are traded for, because I don't think we're going to get too many more trades like this. And I could be wrong here, but I don't think too many more trades like this should happen with 5 first round picks for a guy like a Donovan Mitchell, which, like you said, Chris, I'm not trading that many first round picks myself personally for a Donovan Mitchell because I don't think he's worth ruining the franchise. But of course, it's a situation by situation basis. So to hear that Knicks offer, including RJ, at the end of the day, it didn't necessarily surprise me because I'm sure there had to have been a package discussed regarding that. And at some point, if you're the Knicks, you need to at least speak to Utah of like, okay, what else needs to be given up? Like, I know you don't want to give up RJ, but like, if it could have just been RJ, like you said, and the salary filler and the first, you can maybe convince yourself like, okay, that's not the worst thing in the world. I mean, at the end of the day, Utah declining that also saved RJ because RJ going from New York to Utah, that wouldn't have been good for him. But It wouldn't have been good for anyone, really, including the two of us. There are a lot of places. I've moved states for a job. I don't know if I'd be able to move states to go to Utah. I'm just saying, but in regards to like what this could mean for the Knicks, like you said, Chris, I just think it means that we need to wonder about what direction the franchise that they're going to go forward in. And that's very muddled right now. Like, I just took a brief look at the teams in the standings, and aside from SGA, I can't think of a single young star on a lot of teams right
No
now.
one, bro.
That would be that. And here's the thing with the Knicks, and there's a reason why Chris is specifying young stars, guys. When you have all those draft picks, not just your own first, but all these protected first that you got in these various deals, you want to trade for a guy who's going to be on your team for 10 years. You want to. That's the goal of having all those draft picks. It's you trade picks 5 years down the line to have this guy for 5 years, but then 5 more years if the player is young enough, right? And Donovan Mitchell being 25 years old, you could realistically get him for the next 3 years plus one more extension. You could get 8 years out of Donovan Mitchell for those next 5 years of picks, right? So that's the math you want to do. If you only want just general all-stars like Damian Lillard and Bradley Beal, I'm just throwing the hypothetical out there. You're not like you might get those guys for the 5 years of picks you traded, and then that's probably it because those guys are older now. So, like the thing with the Knicks, and this was like a big critique with the Celtics when they had this draft, all this draft capital, they never made the deal for the guy. And I think if you're the Knicks, not making a deal for Mitchell, it's okay. But now with the recent reports of you saying this, Chris, where they were willing to give up RJ and that they wanted the quick fix, there's no one that's going to give you a quick fix, man. There's just not. And now I think you're kind of in a crossroads for the team where where it's like you have RJ still there. You have a couple other young players still there, and they should maybe get the playing time. But I'm not sorry. You have the worst coach to coach young players. You just do. Like, the only thing that could make the Knicks situation worse is if Jimmy Butler was somehow on the team, because God bless your organization, Chris, because it would become Minnesota 2.0. The situation there is very tenuous. You even have some young guys where it's like, I don't think Emmanuel quickly, like, look, I'm not going to apologize for what I've said about his defense, but I don't think he's always been put in the best situations possible in terms of Tom Thibodeau's lineups.
I don't think any young dude on this team besides RJ has been put in a situation to succeed behind Thibodeau.
Yeah, and especially a guy who recently came up in reports today, but he had commented on the IG post saying Cam Reddish has barely played with the Knicks when they traded for him. Like,
what is going on? I don't understand.
Cam Reddish is like 6'8", right? He's a 6'8", 3-and-D defensive first wing. How does Tom Thibodeau not like that player? How? So, to me, I think if you're the Knicks, look, I know it's not going to happen, but I think if you're the Knicks, this trade, immediately the next NBA headline should have been the Knicks were firing Tom Thibodeau, because he is no longer fit for a roster that doesn't have an all-star player. And I will grant people this, because I've had arguments about coaches before, and Tom Thibodeau has been one of those coaches. I will give you that Tom Thibodeau on a veteran team with at least an all-star caliber player works. I'll give you that.
To an extent.
But on a team, and now we're seeing back-to-back cases with Minnesota and now the Knicks. There's no all-star. Let's be real. I'm sorry. I don't give a shit that Julius Randle was an all-star last season.
I could give less of a shit, bro.
Like, I don't care if he was an all-star last season. On a team with no real all-stars, with just young pieces, that is writing the tickets for these guys' knees to die with Tom Thibodeau there. It's not good. The Knicks, who we thought for the last 2 years, you said it best, Chris, that we thought were building something really good, that we thought had a direction.
Nope.
I think we need to psychoanalyze this franchise a little bit more. I think there needs to be some serious analysis on the thought process of Leon Rose in that group, because now with these reports, I'm not having a lot of faith in this team. And a team that I said going into last season, even though on the show I picked them to make the playoffs, I said in background in text, Chris, and you can verify this, I said, look, Tom Thibodeau falls off after year ones, and if you make zero improvements to the team, it's not going to go well. It didn't go well in year 2, and I'm willing to bet it's not going to go well right now in year 3. It could be the whole he gets the most out of his players, this, that, and the third. Right now, the state of the Knicks franchise is not good.
Not good at all.
It is not a high bar to say you are looking better now than you did in the summer of 2019, I think, right? That's not a high bar. It's really not. That's like saying we have a better human rights record than like insert name of foreign power here. I'm serious. It's like you're you're not you're just not setting a high bar for yourself. And if we always talk about basketball is better when the Knicks are good. When are the Knicks going to make the effort to actually be good to make basketball better? I think that's a question we need to really start asking for the NBA.
We should end off on that line. Because it's a great line. Look, I mean, I know the headlines tomorrow for ESPN because it's that joke of like a network and the garbage filth people network. Of my bad. But then you have the filth of Stephen A. Smith saying, "Oh, it's gonna be LOL. Knicks struck out again." I want to stress this. It's like it's not the worst thing in the world that we didn't get Donovan Mitchell, right? The optics of it look bad because it's another star that we don't get. What it took to get him, I'm fine with that. We didn't end up getting him because I'm not willing to part ways. I'm not willing to part ways with that type of package. That package needs to be from a team that is guaranteed success with this trade. We have high hopes with this fit with Cleveland, right? Because the tools are there to become an all elite team, right? So we have faith in Cleveland. If you're Cleveland, you do this. If the Knicks traded for Donovan Mitchell, this is their team. So say for example, they trade for Donovan Mitchell, and let's just assume RJ Barrett's gone out the door to Utah. It's Jalen Brunson, it's Donovan Mitchell, let's say Quentin Grimes, I guess Julius Randle until he does get traded, and who knows if he gets traded, and a Mitchell Robinson. What is that team doing? I like our bench more than our starting lineup.
And that was the case last year at the very beginning of the season. In terms of defensive rating, the bench was better than the starting lineup. And this is just not, and again, this might as well become one of the shticks on the show at this point. I think we need to try to make a shirt of this. Let's look at the standings. I think that's the tagline for the podcast now. You have the Heat last season. Just Heat were the first seed, Celtics were the second seed, Bucks were the third seed, 76ers were the fourth seed, Raptors 5th, Bulls 6th, Nets 7th, Hawks 8th, Cavs 9th, Hornets 10th. The only team that I see the Knicks potentially jumping is the Hornets. And that's only because Charlotte did not get better this offseason. The Heat are going to stay within the top 6 most likely. The Celtics, the Bucks are going to stay in the top 6. The 76ers are probably going to stay in the top
Nets 6. Will probably be there.
Yeah, Nets are probably going to jump up if Kyrie can finally stay healthy, but God knows when. So let's just assume the top 5 are going to be, relatively speaking, those 5 teams. The 6th seed is up for grabs. There's the Bulls, there's the Hawks, there's the Cavs. Let's go Cleveland. You have those teams. So I just named 8 squads. And of course, actually Toronto, all due respect to Toronto. Even though I think they'll take a slight step back, they'll still be in competition for the 6th seed. So that's 4 more. You have one final spot there. Even if the Knicks make it as a 10th seed, the 9th seed that the Knicks could face is going to be someone between the Raptors, the Bulls, the Hawks, or the Cavs. In a 1-game sample, the Knicks are going to get blown out by 15, maybe, is the best case scenario by any of those teams. Like, I've always had an issue with this, and this will be my gripe forever until the day I die holding a microphone, which could be soon for all we know. But until the day I die, I'm always going to have a problem with mediocre teams staying mediocre and making terrible decisions, but pretending like everything's okay.
Look, if this leads to the Knicks making decisions, like if this means that the Knicks are going to go full youth, right? And we keep RJ, well, obviously we keep RJ, we have Jalen Brunson, we keep Obi Toppin, we keep IQ, we keep Grimes, we keep McBride. Am I missing someone in particular? Young guys in the Knicks?
I think,
and maybe Cam Reddish, but who knows what's going to happen with Cam Reddish in the Knicks? If this failure to acquire Donovan Mitchell signifies that we're going to go youth movement, which I still don't believe because it's Tom Thibodeau at the end of the day, and they have 3 weeks until training camp or whenever the fuck media day is or something like that to get rid of Evan Fournier's of the world and Julius Randle. You could keep your veteran because you don't want to always like have just young guys. We see it with Charlotte. You could keep your Derrick Roses and I don't know, get someone back in return in terms of just like a decent veteran who doesn't take away minutes from the young guys. Then fine. Like that's the silver lining here because it seems like we're not going to be good anytime soon unless we pull off like a heist for Shy, which I just don't see happening at the time being. Whatever. Like, we've been bad for so long. And again, I know the 2020 season was an absolute fluke. It was. As a Knicks fan. As our Knicks fan, it was an absolute fluke. And it actually pushed us back a few years. Because now we're stuck with the Julius Randle contract. I'll say this. I don't know if the full 5 years were guaranteed, but this is Tom Thibodeau's 3rd year as head coach. I think 3 years were guaranteed. The other 2, I think, were options. So I think this is Tom Thibodeau's final year. A part of me is hoping that we suck and he fails because we just get rid of him at that point and then we fully start the rebuild because we're not going to be competitive for the next few years. If that's the case, Johnny Bryant upgrades to head coach. That's the silver lining I see here. That's what I'm hopeful for. But because of this front office and what they've been pulling lately, I don't know, man. I'm cautiously, I'm not even optimistic. I'm just living. I'm just living, and I that's not a good thing right now. But yeah, I hate sports, bro. This is, I don't know, this is such a, like this. I'm praying that the Mets make the World Series, bro. That's the only thing here that's gonna keep my head from being cut off because. Oh boy! Like, do you want to know what Woj just tweeted an article that he wrote? Ready? You know what the headline is?
I did not. No.
How Cleveland. This quote. This is a word for word. How Cleveland and not New York landed All-Star guard Donovan Mitchell in a blockbuster trade. It's already starting. It's already starting, bro. Like, he's such a piece of shit. Like, I get it. It's yeah, we didn't get him, but like, of course the media's gonna play into this. Of course. It's another LOL Knicks situation. But whatever, man. Like, this is their job, Jurg. You know this. This is their job. They have to get clicks like that. They have to.
Like, look, at the end of the day, the Knicks are going to be talked about probably more so than the Jazz and Cavs at some point.
Yeah.
Especially on First Take. Nah, man. Like, I mean, we've already said it. Like, for the Knicks, just have a plan now. That's the best case scenario you could get for losing out on Mitchell. Just have a coherent and clear plan for your franchise. If you can do that, then you can restore the faith a little bit. But right now, like, we're keeping it real. It's not looking good
at all.
It's just not. And for a franchise to have had that that modicum of hope,
yep.
it was such a sliver. You, Chris, you had a dollop of hope in 2021, and now it's gone. Like to hear, like, let me peel back the curtain here, ladies and gentlemen. Chris and me are close friends. We've known each other like since we were children. Like, I have never heard him feel so defeated and just be so self-ashamed. Like what he said, I let them give me hope. It's like freaking Hawkeye in Endgame. It's like, don't give me hope.
They always do this shit, bro. This is my fault. I should know this. You know what? I always. This is why when we chase after women, Jurg. And like they're just so used to just the piece of shit toxic men,
right?
And then there's that reoccurring factor, just like they always end up going back to toxic men,
right?
They just chase toxic men because that's all they know. I now see that perspective.
Yeah,
I now see that perspective. Oh, man. I'm used to toxicity and just trauma. That's all I know. That I'm just gonna keep chasing it subconsciously.
Oh my god!
Like that's all I know. So obviously, I'm gonna go towards that. I can't save myself. Why? I can't go after the guy that's good for me. Why would I? Why should I? Because I don't know. Just because I'm not used to it. So that's all I gotta say.
At the end of the day, Chris, what we're really chasing for, both when it comes to women and our sports team, is and I could say this from experience, we're chasing the dopamine and the serotonin. We're chasing those positive chemicals, and when that shit gets taken away, it hurts.
Yeah, I will say
it hurts.
Yeah. Just to sign us off, this is the last thing I'll say. This is from what's the Arturas Karnisovas fan club?
That sounds about right.
Okay, it was he responded to the trade package that the Jazz got for Donovan Mitchell, and I'm gonna sign off by saying this is just an absolute banger of a tweet. Unprotected picks and Sexton, man. That's unprotected sex as far as I'm concerned. So,
oh man,
shout out to you, man.
Oh, and on that note, ladies and gentlemen, shout out the Twitter account one more time because that was absolutely outstanding.
Yeah. No outro for this one. SomeWhat.sports on Instagram.
Yep.
You can find us on Spotify as well. Subscribe
YouTube,
subscribe on YouTube. All that junk. This might come out first before the episode we recorded earlier this morning because we did record another episode. But that was more NFL dominated. Who knows how this will go? But I'm gonna try and bring this up as soon as possible. To all listeners listening, if you made it this far, we appreciate you, Knicks fans. I don't know, man. I don't know. But until next time, peace.
Peace.